Hi, I'm Chef Rodney with Table 301 Restaurants. I am here in the Sobeys Loft with Mill Village Farms, and we have all this beautiful produce here. And we were thinking we need to talk about how to cut it. What do we do to cut all this produce? So now that we know what knives we should have in our kitchen and what our board should be like, we're ready to start thinking about actually cutting. An onion is sort of a unique vegetable in its shape and the fact that it has layers. And I thought it would be a great place to start as far as how to actually cut, since we use an onion in so many different things. So we'll start talking about an onion, but we're also going to be using our chef's knife today to cut the onion. And I think the first thing to talk about is holding the knife, how to hold the knife. What I do is I will take my handle and I will wrap my fingers around it, but mostly I will be pinching the blade of the knife with those fingers. So really there, and then we wrap around for support, okay? The strength of holding the knife comes from these two fingers. I see a lot of people doing this. This is okay, except it provides a lot of movement, and you don't want a lot of this kind of movement when you're cutting things. You need strength, so holding it here will help you control your knife and keep it straight up and down, because you'll find with the chef's knife, we almost always cut straight up and down to the cutting board. And we want to be practicing that and doing that, okay? So, the onion, first thing we need to do is peel an onion, okay? I start, and there's a lot of rumors about how to do this so you don't cry. I've never, after many years of cutting onions, found a really good way to do that. One hint I will give you though is if you have your fan over your stove and you have your counter apart from it, try to not stand between the fan and the stove. So try to stand on one side, have your onion, and have your fan. And if you run your fan, it actually will help pull that stuff towards the fan. So we do that in the restaurants whenever we can. If you got the Mill Village boxes that we did and you had the tikka masala, you had a pack of onions, imagine how many big bins of onions we had to cut, all with nobody crying and then cutting themselves because they couldn't see the onion. So that's how we did it. We lined up across a table and we had the fan over there just pulling it out as fast as we were cutting, so I didn't even see any crying. So take your onion, and it doesn't matter which end you do first, but you see there's an end and an end. It's really obvious in this style of Vidalia style of onion, but it's in just about every onion. In this one, even though it's more round, it will be just that end and that end. And you want to just cut those off. No matter how we're going to cut this, we want to cut those off. So stand it up, hold it very firmly, and just slice. Let the knife do the work. Don't push hard. If you have to push hard, your knife is probably too dull. Once you do that, we have to say, okay, now what are we doing with this onion? If we're cutting onion rings, which, I don't know, in my work, it's the least thing we would be doing. We might be doing it. So if we were to cut this onion now into rings, we would peel it by taking a little slit here and then with our fingers trying to peel it all the way around. Then we would be able to just simply cut the rings, okay? Most of the cutting I do of an onion is not really rings. We don't put rings in recipes and make sauces with rings, stuff like that. So yes, we may cut rings to make, rings for put on a hamburger or to make some onion rings. But in this case, I want to show you some better cuts to do other things with. So I'm not going to peel it that way now, because that's actually the slowest way to peel an onion. What I'll do now is once I've cut the ends off, put it on its flat surface either side, and then I'll go right to the middle of it and I will cut it straight through. Once I've done that, I'm very quickly able to grab one layer, the outside layer that has the peel, and just pull it right off there, and it pulls off easily, as you can see. So if I were racing someone, we talked about Carl and I racing in the date night thing we did with Edwin McCain. I would have done it like this. I don't know how Carl would have peeled his onion, but here we are, and we've got these ready to go, okay? I am a big fan of when you're done with something on your cutting board, get rid of it. So trash can, or in this case I happen to have a sink right here where I can just put these out of my way, and we want to keep this board at all times as clear as we can make it. So we peel something, we get rid of the peels. We chop something and we're going to go chop something else, we remove it from our board and we work with a clean board, okay? Now, the first cut, that's one of the ones you see all the time, whether you're sauteing like peppers and onions to make a sausage and pepper sandwich, or just there's a lot of different things you might use it for. We call it julienne, which is just a straight stick type cut. And in onion, what that means literally is to just cut the onion straight across. And you can see on an onion, you've got these lines that are naturally there. And in some things I'm gonna show you, we'll cut with those lines, and some things we're gonna intentionally cut against the lines. So in this case, for julienne or just little strips of onion, we would cut with the lines. So we just start down here. Now you see how I hold my, my onion is with these fingers, okay? Most of the pressure is on my thumb and this finger. There are others are just sort of wrapping it around so it doesn't move, okay? I always know where my fingers are. I always know where my knife is. And I do not want to lose track of that. I also do not want this thumb to come out because I'm gonna end up cutting it. When I was starting in this profession, I cut that thing regularly. So I'm just gonna say, cut it like that. Now, I don't even mind if my knife touches, because as I said, we're gonna cut straight up and down to the board. So my knife shouldn't be like that, about to cut my fingers. It should be like this, not cutting my fingers. And my fingers guide my knife. So we'll just do that. And we'll just start towards the tip of the knife and go down to the board, down to the board. And that is how you cut. I see a lot of people going, that is not proper. You're gonna dull your knife by pushing too hard. You're gonna mush the thing you're cutting. The knife is sharp and it's shaped to do the work. So make sure you start at the tip and you push forward and go down. And that's it. You don't stop until you get to the board. Okay? The objective, no matter what we're cutting, if we're gonna cut a bunch of something to go in a recipe, the same shape is excellent, but not as important as the same size. So in this, if I cut some thin ones and some thick ones, I will have made two shapes of onions that will take different times to cook, different amounts of time to cook. You don't want that. So we wanna be careful. We wanna go as slow as it takes to make sure all of your slices are the same thickness. Those will cook in the same amount of time, and we won't have some burnt ones and some raw ones, okay? So usually when I get to that point, somewhere half or a little past half is no problem, then I will just turn it over and make it more manageable. So I always try to make it so where I'm cutting when it's more manageable. So, and that's how you do the onion. Okay, now that's the julienne. In a lot of vegetables, there's a different way to go from julienne to what we're gonna call dice. Dice is where you have little squares, okay? And an onion, we're gonna do it differently than we're gonna do it when we do any of these vegetables, and we'll show that. But for now, we wanna cut this onion into little squares to go in a recipe. And we can do little, or we can do not as little. A lot of times, professionally, they will teach us to do that by cutting with the lines, but not cutting through to the end. Once we've done that, then we would need to turn our knife this way and cut some sideways cuts. Over a lot of time of cutting, for a lot of different things, I have a different way that I do it. So I'm gonna show you that way because I think it works better for most things. If I was in a culinary competition, mind you, where they're looking at and they're going, are his dices perfect squares? Are they exact? I would go back and do it that way, the classic way. But since that's not what happens when my 1-year-old and my 3-year-old are freaking out waiting for dinner to get on the table, I have to do it what I think is a faster way that still does a good job. And that's this. Instead of with the lines, I cut across the lines. And I still don't cut to the end. You can cut to the end if you can manage to hold your stuff. But if you can't, just don't go all the way. So you're gonna start this time, instead of starting and going that way, we're gonna start with our knife on, and we're gonna come down this way. And again, we're just holding nice and tight here, keeping our hands out of the way, okay? If you don't feel comfortable to do that last cut, just don't, and then just do something else. Or you might also do something like this, where you just kind of sandwich it and do that cut. I would have gone one more cut with no problem, of course. My knife is very sharp and I'm used to doing it. Okay, now that it's like this, I would start by just angling my knife just a little, and we'll start those end cuts. Those are the ones where we go against the rule. But now I just follow the shape of my onion, And as you can see, I'm cutting all these nice little, what we'll call dice. They're really sort of a rougher chop, but they're still nice and small, right size for us to put into a recipe. Now, when I get to this end, which is the part we didn't cut yet, I will just go ahead and slice it all the way through. I can do it as thin or thick as I need, and then I will lay it down and go across. And that way we've diced up all of them. Okay? So again, that's not culinary. That's not, if we were going to Culinary Institute of America, that's not what the professor's showing us to do to dice an onion. But this is a great way to really fast dice an onion and get the right size. Okay? So that's some great ways to cut an onion. That's how you hold your knife. Remember, don't stick this out, and make sure you hold it nice and firmly and cut down to your board. All right? When we come back, we're gonna talk about some other vegetables.